welcome to the NewsX Sunday Guardian Roundtable. But today we are here to discuss the legacy and the era of Ratan Tata. His sudden demise has left us all, I think, bereft of an era where I think it was not just business, but business with a philanthropic edge. It's also a way of doing business, the gentleman way of doing things. That is something we are going to be missing with his absence. Joining me today to discuss this on the show, I have with me MK Venu. He's the founding editor of the Wire.in. Dilip Cherian, he's a brand guru and a columnist. Pranjal Sharma, he is someone who has actually interviewed Ratan Tata 3 times. He's also an analyst and an economic editor. And Amitabha Pande, he is a former secretary in the government of India and someone who's had occasion to work with Ratan Tata, I think way back in the 80s, if I'm not wrong, during Rajiv Gandhi's time. But first, Venu, I'll begin with you. The legacy of an era gone by. How do you see Ratan Tata's, the gap that he left behind?
Well, it is a huge legacy in the sense that, in some ways, Ratan Tata, the era of Ratan Tata and the Tata Group during his tenure, in some ways, it has greater importance, if you will, because he came into the Tata Group as chairman in 1991, and his entry as chairman, as the head of the group, coincided with the launch of economic reforms in India. So, in that sense, there's an overlap in terms of what India was going through, India's economic policy, the huge transformation that was being attempted in India's political economy, economic policy, India's global trade policy, etc. And Tata taking over the group. So that's why if you look at Ratan Tata's tenure as chairman, 1991 to 2012. In 1991, the Tata Group turnover was somewhere around $5.6 billion, and by 2012. It was $100 billion approximately. So you look at the leap from $5.6 billion to $100 billion, and this is just turnover. If you look at profitability, I think it went up over 50 times. Market cap, huge. So in a way, you could argue that that India's post reforms growth trajectory and Ratan Tata's stewardship of his group and his own Tata Group's growth strategy in many ways ran parallelly, right? So, and this is also the period where he takes his own group global, and this is a phase where he takes very, very bold decisions. Sometimes he makes mistakes also, like he makes huge bets. For instance, when India, in that period, India was when India was growing apace, he takes a call on buying, let's say Tata, buying Core Steel Company in Europe, and then he makes a big bet during that period on buying automobile brands globally like Jaguar, etc. And he also buys Tetley. So he really he thinks global, but he also makes mistakes. Like Nano, for instance, Nano was he was very big on Nano. One of Tata's key characteristics, when I was the Economic Times editor there, and before that Business Standard, which we as reporters we learned, was that he had very strong convictions. Sometimes he would also have strong convictions in the wrong direction, right? So Nano was great vision, but Nano didn't work out in spite of Gujarat, Narendra Modi inviting him, setting up a plant, etc.
I'll interrupt.
Yeah. So also I'll say another thing. Ratan Tata learned from his mistakes. Before he became chairman, he was eased into the Tata Group I remember as a reporter in the early, I think in the 80s, he launches Nelco, a computer company, and I think India was not ready for a computer company because Indian regulation was not ready. Tariffs were very
Okay.
high, so that it failed. So then he
Okay.
moves away from hardware to software, TCS. So
Okay,
he's
I'm going to
done some of
interrupt
these
you,
things.
Venu. I just want a big picture, then I'll come in all the details. Dilip, the big picture of the larger gap that we are trying to see of the way of doing business, really, the way Ratan Tata stood for.
Ratan Tata was axial to the way, as Venu said, to the way India flexed its muscle post 1991. It coincided with his being chairman, but also it coincided with the period of taking big bets. And don't forget that he had been in the company, in the group, since 1961. So he was already 30 years of seniority in the group when he takes over as chairman. I've interviewed him during my previous avatar as Business India.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And I can tell you that he had always the big picture beyond the company he was looking at. When you mentioned Nelco, beyond even telco, he was always thinking much bigger. I remember on one occasion, at a time when they had lost the fancy airline that JRD had created to the government, he was already dreaming that at some stage he wants to create, like a hotel chain which he had, an airline for India, well before he started with Singapore Airlines and things like that. In my business dealings with him during my image making days, I recognized that here was a man who not only could take all the big decisions himself, but always insisted on sharing it with top executives. He was constantly building the leadership pipeline. This was very fundamental to the way he worked. He liked it, he needed it, and he relied on it so that he could do what he wanted to do. There's this fabulous episode I remember where a friend of mine was the photographer for Fortune magazine in the US. And when they flew in to do a shoot with him, he had just acquired his brand new toy of a Falcon aircraft. So they were choppered, the whole Fortune team was choppered to another airport close to Bombay. And Mr. Tata did multiple landings and takeoffs till the sun set, including night takeoffs, because he was also the kind of person who enjoyed the few things that were private passions of his for pure pleasure. Everyone talked a lot about the dogs. The other thing that I want to say is that as a businessman, he also took some very hard decisions, whether it was the decision to get rid of Cyrus Mistry or the decision to insist on producing a car for 1 lakh, which proved to be a bummer. All of those were hard business decisions that he could take. I'll stop here.
Thank you, Dilip. Pranjal, you also interviewed him 2, 3 times. So just any personal anecdotes or something that you know about the interview that you could share with us?
I met him 3 or 4 times, I mean, several times, but on camera, I had an occasion to interview him thrice. One was when his passenger car was being launched. Second time when he was celebrating the Indian Institute of Science's anniversary. Remember, Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore was started with the endowment and support from Jamsetji Tata. So, and then there was another occasion with the Harvard Business School alumni. There was an event, and I had been invited to meet him and interview him along with a couple of others. And it was very interesting. There was some kind of a scheduling error or a mismatch. So I was in a conversation with Anand Mahindra at that time. And, and we were about to start. And then somebody said, no, but why don't you get Mr. Tata first and record with him? He said, no problem. He just, leaned against the door and waited while I did a conversation with Anand Mahindra, and we had a good chat. And, it wasn't like I've seen a lot of other CEOs and business leaders who would have thrown a tantrum. If not them, then, their teams would would throw a tantrum saying that how can you wait and make my boss wait so long? But there was no such air about him, and he felt, he was like a very regular person to have a conversation with.
Okay. Mr. Pande, you've also interacted with him. In fact, I read about your anecdote. Could you tell us about the point, your interaction with him?
I can't claim to have been either a close friend or had known him for any length of time, but for 2 years, 2.5, 3 years, in 1985 to 1988, I had a burst of sort of interactions with him over what was probably the most controversial project in India's business history, which was the entry of PepsiCo into India via its investment in Punjab agribusiness. That was the route which was decided. Now, Ratan was not originally involved with the idea of the project, but when we applied, we knew that the project was likely to become very controversial. And this was a very interesting period because Punjab was in the middle of the worst kind of terrorist crisis. Government of India Indira Gandhi had just been replaced by Rajiv. She had been assassinated. It was the period when the industry, when the license quota Raj was still very, very dominant, when liberalization, breadth of liberalization was just bits of whiffs were sort of coming in with Rajiv Gandhi. And the Tatas themselves were a very feudal kind of organization with all these Tata chiefs, the Darbari Seth, Ajit Kerkar, Rusi Modi. These were all the satraps. And they all ran their own individual empires, protected their turf battles fiercely. And Ratan was, although he'd been in the group, but all these satraps were still far too dominant for him to take take an active role. But he was beginning to be seen as he was the heir designate, and therefore he was beginning to be seen as very important. So when we filed our application for Pepsi, and this was a very difficult time when getting a license itself was the project. Just wanting to do something legitimate was one of the most difficult things to do. And certainly in a politically sensitive climate like that. And we knew that our project would face a lot of controversy, although we didn't anticipate the degree to which it became most controversial. So at that time, Amrinder Singh was the agriculture minister in the Barnala government.
Right.
And because he had school friendship with Rajiv Gandhi, so therefore we decided to get Rajiv Gandhi's nod before we formally filed the application, so that after that the signal would go down the bureaucracy and the passage of the project would be smooth.
Okay.
So he went and met Rajiv Gandhi, and Rajiv Gandhi was impressed by the idea by the project, and said that he wanted someone from. He also knew that it would be controversial, so he wanted someone from Punjab and someone from the Tatas to coordinate with Montek Singh Aluwala, who's then looking after all.
But how did you find Ratan Tata? Just if you want to just cut this over.
It was Rajiv Gandhi who suggested that we should get Ratan Tata to be the point person from Tatas.
Okay.
He was not originally there. It was Aluwala and Jagdish Chopra and various other people. So when Rajiv Gandhi said Ratan Tata, then Ratan Tata came in, because that was more or less like a command directive. So he was brought into the project through the seasons. And after that, of course, then the controversy, the crap really hit the fan, and it became one of the most, and at that time, very amusingly, the person most struck by the ferocity of the attack on us was Ratan Tata. He couldn't believe that a a project like this should cause so much controversy. And in a private meeting in Delhi with Zahid Beg, with many of the Tata employees and so on, and Montek Singh Ahluwalia, when the controversy had suddenly sort of burst, and a huge number of very derogatory articles that were being written all over the press and blades and so on. I remember Montek saying that, economically the project makes a lot of sense, but politically, do you think it's... Well, and Ratan, who's supposed to be our champion for the project, says, yes, I also think that, is it politically worth it? Here is a man who's supposed to be actively championing this, who himself is apologetic about the...
Okay, I'm going to take a break and come back because I think politics in his projects is something he saw in West Bengal also. So take a quick break and come back. So stay with us. Hello and welcome back to the NewsX Sunday Guardian Roundtable. We're here remembering the legacy of Ratan Tata. And, Venu, what Mr. Pande just spoke about was also the satraps that he had to deal with, within at an earlier stage. Later on, of course, he had that turf war with Cyrus Mistry that Dilip alluded to. So he had his own share of turf wars within and outside. More within, I would say.
Yeah, see, initially he had to spend about the first, 2 to 3 years of his chairmanship dealing with these strong satraps that J.R.D. Tata had left behind. That's primarily because J.R.D. had a different style of functioning. He really decentralized. He allowed his CEOs, what we call satraps, to run their companies and have their run it the way they wanted to. So people like Darbari Seth, Rusi Modi, and Ajit Kerkar and all were big power centers unto themselves. Ratan Tata came and he had his own vision, and he realized that to implement his vision and his convictions, he needed to get these satraps to align with the larger ideas that he had, but he initially failed. So he had to fight them quite bitterly, and they resisted. And bit by bit, he replaced them. He got his own people, and essentially, Ratan Tata in the initial years appeared to be a centralizer because he realized that he had a set of ideas which had to be around which he had to align the entire group and all his CEOs, and he believed in those ideas, and he may have made mistakes in some of them. So therefore, many Tata CEOs those days would also describe him as stubborn, describe him as very inflexible, etc., etc. So, but that was him. He had to sort of he thought of something, and he had to sort of get everybody aligned to his philosophy of doing businesses. So, simply for instance, even with as you said with Cyrus Mistry, what was his main difference? He was the one who brought Cyrus Mistry in, right? Cyrus Mistry was looking at each business on a very cost and profitability basis. Is it worth investing in? Is it worth investing in this project, that project? Is this project giving us or potentially will give us returns or not? So based on that, he was kind of trying to get rid of or dilute certain projects, whereas Ratan Tata thought differently. Ratan Tata, if you study his mindset, if he liked the project, Priya, then he won't mind if it runs into losses in the initial years, like Air India. I can 100% tell you today that Air India is not going to turn around in the next few years. Air India is really going to lose money because it's a heavy. I mean, a lot of investments are needed. A lot of things have to happen in Air India. Nobody else would have touched it. Believe me, Cyrus Mistry if he was given a choice, he would have said no to the government. I don't want it. But I think it was Ratan Tata's kind of his conviction that got Air India Tata bought it. Even now, some people say that Tatas were very reluctant. But I think the deciding factor, in my view, would have been Ratan Tata. Even if some of his CEOs would have said at that time, do you seriously think we can deal with this white elephant, with huge debt and huge losses, accumulated losses? But of course, they got some tax breaks, etc., and they did it. So basically, he would do something if he thought that that it would, in some sense, it would, that the name of Tata, the brand Tata, would be able to sustain it over a longer period, even if it doesn't make profits in the initial years, initially 4 or 5 years. So that's the way I think he thought. Yeah,
I would add that he had a vision. See, we can't fault him for vision. Even before Nano, some people say it was a failure. It was not. He had launched Indica, the passenger car from Tata Motors stable, the first passenger car. Everybody used to make fun of it, saying that how can a truck maker make a car? And this was quite a milestone, because he said, I want it to be as spacious and strong as an ambassador, but also as convenient and easy to drive like a Maruti. And this was the first car which was made with completely and mostly indigenous technology. And even Nano was ahead of its time. And today, if you see, a lot of companies, including Bajaj and MG, have similar cars on the road. So the product was not bad. Maybe I think the way it was marketed was bad. But, to add to what Venu said, if you look at the group and Ratan Tata's vision, it was in some ways the priority was the nation, then the society, the customer, the citizen, the employees, and then perhaps the company and its profits, because that was the way. And if you look at it, many other companies go in the reverse order. Let me get my profits in first, and then I will go to any other part and look at what else is going on. I'll tell you one more quick story. I had a chance to interview Sunil Mittal when he had just got those telecom cell phone licenses, and I asked him who inspired him the most. And he was a very young and upcoming entrepreneur those days. So he said, look, for me, I want to have the ambition, energy, and aggression of Dhirubhai Ambani, but I also want to have the values, the ethics, and the nationalistic fervor that Ratan Tata represents. So Mr. Tata also inspired many generations of the entrepreneurs who grew in the post-liberalization era.
That is Dilip, where I want you to come in is, do we have a gentleman business, I don't know what's the word label for them, industrialist businessman like him anymore, whether it is philanthropy or whatever. He is one of the last of the dying breeds, really.
As a gentle capitalist, Ratan Tata embodied all these things. He was also pretty hard-nosed about some business decisions, which is why he was often called very obstinate within the group itself. But I think what makes him stand out and why this current massive outcry for a Bharat Ratna for him is because he espoused issues which are much larger than him. For true greatness, you've got to espouse issues which are much bigger than you, much bigger than the company, much bigger than your trust, much bigger than even the country. So I want to just spend 1 minute on two trusts on which he was on the board and played an active role. One is the Population Foundation of India, and the other is the National Foundation of India. Both these are large philanthropic organizations. He led them, and he allowed himself to be seen visibly as a supporter of them, because every regime, it didn't matter which color of regime it was, always had obstacles to put in the way of these institutions, because they were, in the way they were designed to disrupt whatever was happening. So Ratan Tata had the courage, along with several others, and he wasn't the only one, but he did stand up for them, and he was always available to them, and that is because he wanted to grab a cause which was much larger than anything that he could hold, and that made him much greater.
To add to what Dilip said, it was also that in his even post-retirement, he was actively engaged with the startup scene. So it's not as if he was only looking at legacy companies. If you see the personal investment he made in so many startups, he was up to the ball on the new technologies, whether it's AI-based companies or getting into the new defense projects. So I think while he had the legacy advantage, he was also always thinking and living in the future.
The future is Venu, where I wanted to come in. What is the future of the Tata Group now? Is it? He's got, of course, people in place, but do you see that without his overarching presence, there would be some, a gap, or will Air India continue, for instance?
See, fundamentally, the Tata Group. If you see their corporate structure, it is the most, even under Ratan Tata, it's a fairly decentralized functioning. Their CEOs are fairly well empowered, and Ratan Tata was known for choosing the right person, even if it is from importing somebody from Europe or some foreigner as CEO, like he did for Tata Motors for a while and some other company. So they are very professionally organized. And the knowledge system within the Tatas, I've noticed, Priya, it is the knowledge system, the flow of knowledge is fairly decentralized. A lot of knowledge flows back from ground up, and it is encouraged there. CEOs are allowed, and middle-level people are allowed to sort of study, research, etc., which is not something which happens in some other big, well-known Marwadi companies where you can count 5 people, and beyond 5, you don't know beyond these guys who are the ones who are managing the group. So Tatas are a bit different. So I feel, given this, Ratan Tata and some of his basic values will continue to be sort of observed by the Tata Group. And I think I read in the Economic Times yesterday that they were already easing some of the other Tata family people, not now, for some years, through various companies. I think Noel Tata's daughter, she's called Leah Tata, and his son Neville Tata, and there's a third person. They've all been coming into the Tata system to different companies, the hotels and some Tata Consumer, etc. So there will be a Tata presence there, but not in a very in-your-face kind of way in which other family-owned companies are run, which was never the case earlier also, whether it was during JRD Tata or Ratan Tata. So I think it will continue to operate. The whole corporate structure will continue to operate in a kind of decentralized way, and all their companies are doing well, and they are the Tata Group in the last 10-15 years has done very well on the market, on stock market. The Tata shares, they spell even today. They have the most sought after shares, and that ethical thing, people's mind. The brand Tata, it's clearly a cut above any other company that you can talk about in India.
Yeah, I just want Dilip for a quick word on brand Tata. It has its share of controversies, Dilip, before we go, but brand Tata versus Ratan Tata himself, are they synonymous?
I think brand Tata precedes Ratan Tata by many, many, many years. So let's not go down that road. Also, brand Tata stands for trust, and it has. And so far, most of their products have withstood the test of competition, of allegations, etc. Ratan is also very famous for having, I remember telling me a long time ago that I will not get a business by having to bribe a minister. So, the trust, the brand Tata, reliability, all of that actually has worked hugely in advantage, but it is a legacy advantage. And that legacy advantage has been harnessed well and retained consistently by Ratan. That's the important thing.
Okay. Final word, Mr. Pande. Do you think this? Are you optimistic of him getting a Bharat Ratna?
I should think so, because he's also politically very acceptable to almost every section of things. So I think that's so. And I can fully corroborate everything that has been said. But four things for me stand out. One, he shook up the world of Tatas by bringing in a fresh new vision, which was very bold for its time, and he could stick his neck out. Two, his own political naivety was in fact a great asset because he was completely unable to get into this deal fixing brokerage which most other Indian businesses were into. He was totally opposed to that. So it made him a great ally, especially for someone from the public sector like me. And three was his passion for technology. I mean, even in the 80s, he was already very much into new technologies, into new materials, advanced materials, advanced plastics, and so on. And fourth is this commitment to ethics, which is, of course, was a Tata legacy. But he really stuck his neck out, made him very, very different from any other businessman you could be.
On that note, thank you so much for this conversation. And we really do remember a legend and hope that his ethics live on. Thank you so much.
Thank you.